lock your hands. Think about this being a full circle, like so. My 10 fingers, a 10-finger grip, is the largest circle. A palm-to-palm grip is a slightly smaller circle. A wrist-to-wrist grip is an even smaller circle. And then a figure 4 grip is the smallest circle that you can form. Now, obviously, a figure 4 is not going to be applicable from here because unless you're fighting a child, you will never be able to figure 4 your arms around someone's torso. So the 3 grips we use are wrist to wrist, which is always the tightest because of the fact that it's the smallest circle. Palm to palm, and 10 finger, which will always be the loosest because of the fact that it's the smallest circle. Okay? It's the bigger circle, sorry. If you're fighting someone who's very small and you have long arms, always go wrist to wrist. If you're fighting someone who's very large and you have short arms, always go either palm to palm or 10 finger. Okay? So I always generally prefer going in wrist to wrist, like so, and going in for my body locks. But you can use palm to palm, you can use 10 finger grips like so. Also, the smaller the circle you close, whether you go palm to palm or wrist to wrist, the more pressure on your wrist it will put. So if you have bad wrists, I generally recommend going in and using 10 finger grips like so. It's a little bit easier on your wrists. For me, my wrists are fine, so I always generally prefer wrist to wrist grips like so. Okay? So that's with hands centered in your standard body lock. We can use one of those 3 grips. Another grip we can use is a long arm, short arm method, where instead of having my hands centered on my partner's center line, we go long arm, short arm like so. This is usually with the intention of getting an elbow inside my partner's hip like so. So I can dominate the inside real estate at the hip. So I can go long arm, short arm here, and now from here, I can switch, have my hands locked in a slightly different position with a different function, and I have one long, one short, and I usually look to use this to get an elbow inside my partner's hip. Not always, but usually, if I have locked hands. I have a position where we can go in, and we can lock with hands in the center, but this time we can go over one of our partner's arms. So we have over-under. And again, you can lock in one of those 3 positions, depending upon the length of your arms versus the size and girth of your partner's torso. You can go double over. Now I lock both of my partner's hands in place, and I lock the elbows to the body, and we go and we lock with double overhooks, like so. So when we're talking about locked hands with a front body lock, those are your main positions. We have hands centered on my partner's center line in one of 3 locks. We have a long arm, short arm, like so, and like so. We have an over-under with my hands centered. It doesn't make sense now to go long arm, short arm. We keep hands centered like so. We have double overs, and now we keep our hands centered like so. When we're talking about body locks, it's important that we also go over the position of unlocked hands. Because yes, you're correct, they're not body locks. My hands aren't locked around my partner's body. The positions are so similar, they go hand in hand. It's important to go over unlocked hands as well as having locked hands. So what are our positions where we can work? Where we have unlocked hands this time. Okay? We have unlocked hands, we go in and we can use a tight waist grip. We reach through and we simply grab a tight waist on our partner like so. This is usually used so that we have a free hand to post on our partner's knee, or more commonly, inside of our partner's hip. And we can use this to convert to a long arm, short arm, where we actually have locked hands with an inside elbow. So from here, we can go locked hands, like so. We can go unlocked hands, like so. We can utilize the tight waist, and we can go back and forth between the 2. And we'll look more at that later, okay? We can go with double underhooks, where instead of locking my hands, like so, I can just use double underhooks. I can go up high, and I can lock up on my partner's shoulder line. Or I can go in, I can plant my hands here. So instead of actually locking my partner's hips in place with the true classical body lock, I can unlock my hands, and I can start moving to true underhooks from here. Where now instead of going to body locks, we have double underhooks. Instead of being down by my partner's hips, we're up by my partner's shoulders. And then of course, using underhook, overhook positions, where I have one underhook, one overhook, and we can start to work from these positions. So while they're not your classical body locks, where I have my hands locked around my partner's body, they are important because you have to be able to transition between locked and unlocked hands depending upon what your partner does. Okay, so from front body locks, those are our main positions we work from, going from locked hands to unlocked hands and changing our hand position based on what our partner is looking for. All right, so now let's look at different hand positions when we get to a side body lock. All right, now these are differentiated into two different positions, head inside and head outside. When we have a head inside body lock, head inside side body lock, we can use a couple different hand positions from here. One is we can use a near side lock, where my hands are locked on my partner's near hip like so. So now my partner goes to scoot out and away from me. It's a difficult thing, difficult for her to move around. In general, I use, actually we'll go over that later, I use a near side lock. We have a far side lock. From here, we lock our hands over our partner's far side hip, and we can transition to inside elbow positions if we want. We can do a lot of different things from here. We have a near side tight waist, where my hand, my near hand, reaches through, and we use a tight waist like so, and we have unlocked hands. So now we can use this to move my partner's legs. We can start bringing our partner's two knees together, and we can start working from here. And we have a far side tight waist, where I use a tight waist on my partner's far hip, and we just go in and we lock like so, and now from here we can start working. In general, I keep my hands locked. If I'm going to move my hand position away, or going to switch my hand position, I do so briefly, and then I relock my hands. I do so briefly, and then I change my body position. Okay? Because of the fact that normally when I go side body lock, my partner stays seated from here. She can start scooting away from me, just like hip out that way, like shrimp away. She can start scooting away and inverting the knee and start facing me. Okay? So I'm not going to say to never unlock your hands, but in general, I usually stay for the majority of the time with my hands locked in some configuration. All right? Now, depending on what your partner is going to do from here, if my partner is looking to try to turn away from me, I usually use either a near side lock or a far side tight waist. Okay, my hands are locked in the near hip, or I have a far side tight waist like so. And now when she goes to turn away from me, it turns into a tight waist where I can start moving into situations where I can control my partner's hips and start taking my partner's back. If I see my partner's trying to turn into me, I usually use some kind of far side lock, like so, or a near side tight waist. So now my partner goes to turn towards me, we can start getting my partner's knees to point away from me, start going into leg rides and things of that nature. Okay, so we have a couple different ways to lock. We have head inside with a side body lock. We can lock our hands on the near side, the near hip, like so. We can lock our hands on the far hip, like so. Like so. We can use a near side tight waist, okay? Like so. We can use a far side tight waist, like so. If my partner tries to turn towards me here, this wouldn't make sense to stay with the far side tight waist. If my partner went to go turn away from me, this would make sense. If my partner tried to turn towards me here, it would make sense for a near side tight waist. If she went to go turn away from me, it wouldn't really make much sense here. I'll go over this in detail later. But just so you understand, side body lock, head inside, we have these different hand positions. Now these change a little bit when we go to head outside, side body lock. When we go head outside, side body lock, like so, what I generally recommend is using a near side lock, like so. So my hand's locked on my partner's near hip. So when she goes to shrimp away, it's a difficult thing. What I don't want is for my partner to start wrapping